For our next conversation, and thanks to our incredible partner Trilegal, we will be welcoming Pratyush Singh, who is a partner at Trilegal, to delve into how international and Indian institutions are expanding their global footprint and forging new partnerships.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pratyush Singh. I'm a partner with Trilegal. I will be the moderator for this session today. The topic for our session is universities scaling at a global market. To begin with, to set context, this discussion is not merely going to be about educational institutions expanding their geographical footprint in the world, but it's also about the challenges that they face, the opportunities that they seek, and also the strategy that they adopt in this endeavor. In today's day and age, which is characterized by increased globalization, technological innovation, and unprecedented connectivity, I think the traditional borders for educational institutions are increasingly blurred. It's universities which were once confined within national borders now find themselves competing at a global stage. With that in context, there are multiple avenues that are now available for universities to scale globally, which is through either forging collaborations and partnerships with counterparts across continents or setting up campuses or branch campuses across the world. But I'm sure each of these avenues also come with their set of challenges, whether it is in terms of cultural differences, differing academic standards, or even regulatory hurdles. I hope from this discussion we will gain insights from our esteemed panel today on some of these challenges, opportunities, and strategies. Over the next 30 minutes, our esteemed panel will offer their respective universities' perspectives and their invaluable insights into the strategies and experiences that they have currently in scaling globally. I would now like to introduce the panel to you, starting with the lady at my left, Dr. Isabelle Huault, from the university, from Emlyon Business School. The gentleman next to her is Mr. Eric Hamberger, Managing Director of Wharton Online at the University of Pennsylvania. And the lady next to him is Ms. Carissa Little, Associate Dean, Global Online Education School of Engineering and Executive Director, Stanford Center for Professional Development and Stanford Online. I welcome you all. Okay, to begin with, I will start with a question that are for all panelists here. I would like for you to share your perspective on how your respective institutions view the global higher education market, as well as the need that you feel to scale globally, especially since you come from large domestic markets such as the US and France. What is the need that you feel to scale globally, and what are the opportunities that you see in this endeavor, as well as the sort of challenges that you've currently encountered? Maybe we can start with you, Dr. Isabelle.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for introducing me. What we observe with attention and interest is the expansion and development of Indian higher education ecosystem. There are 41 million Indian students who are studying here in India. There are more and more universities, more and more colleges. There is 1 million students studying abroad, especially in English-speaking countries, UK, Australia, and we would like to be part of this Indian success story as a European business school, as an Emlyon business school. And the questions are, how can we contribute positively to this education ecosystem? How can we answer the growing needs of education of the Indian education ecosystem? How can we enhance capabilities and skills of Indian students and give access to knowledge, world-class knowledge and infrastructures? So all these are our questions, and I'm convinced that we have to adapt to the Indian economy, that we have to think about the specificities of India and not to export mechanically and automatically and directly our thinking about education. What we do as an institution in India is very different than what we are doing in China, for example, with our Indian campus. So that are our main challenges, and we feel that the opportunities and the possibilities are very important in India to enhance capabilities and skills of Indian students. So that's our main challenges, and I will explain later maybe how we develop our partnerships here in India.
Right. Thank you. Eric, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think the lens for us at Penn and at Wharton has changed significantly in just the last 6 months. If folks have been following the news cycle in the US, stakeholder activism has resulted in the transition of our university president. And the geopolitical climate in the United States is a bit critical of elite higher education right now, which makes it challenging as we're still looked to by the school to generate revenue, to take our brand to places globally, and yet we have this difficult juxtaposition, right? There's that tension now that we're under even a bigger microscope than we may have been just last year. So I think we're now approaching it even more carefully than we did in the past, and it's been a real challenge. But opportunities to engage with people at conferences like this has been nice and a refreshing change after the temperature of the last several months.
We also had our president step down relatively recently, and there's a lot of pressure on higher education in the United States. So just to kind of amplify what Eric said, I think it's generally a challenging environment. All that said, Stanford has a long history, even in its mission statement, of being a generous provider of education. We at Stanford and Stanford Online have for decades been extending education beyond the borders of Stanford, and since 95 we've had 9 million learners outside of the US take advantage of our content and courses. We have a long history of partnering in order to make those things possible. About 15% of our learners actually are from India, and we currently don't have any kind of local partnerships, but our strategy for scaling globally is actually to partner, provide meaningful credentials, provide access to underserved communities around the globe. So that's part of our mission and our strategy.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Let me shift focus more towards India for a moment. I believe each of your schools do have some sort of collaboration and partnerships existing in India. Recently, there have been a significant shift or change in the regulatory framework for foreign institutions entering India, where now we have, where foreign institutions now are permitted to sort of set up branch of campuses, also offer sort of courses in collaboration with other Indian institutions. The Gift City is another avenue that's opened up for foreign institutions to set up branch campuses in India. In light of these recent changes, has your strategy for India changed, or how do you see these changes in the regulatory framework? Are there still any major hurdles that you see, or do you see that opportunities have opened up significantly for each of you? Maybe we could start with Carissa.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you know, over the decades, we've looked to partner with institutions in India directly. We like that model where we collaborate with another institution of higher ed. We might license content. We might fly faculty to do content delivery locally. And that's a good model for us because you know your learners and students better than we can ever know, because we're not here to understand the cultural context or how what we teach can be applied in this ecosystem. So that's a good strategy for us. I think the thing for Stanford's a research institution, so we wouldn't set up a campus here unless it had to do with faculty coming here to do research. But I do think that the regulatory environment opening up is really a positive thing. I mean, I mentioned we tried to partner a couple of decades ago, and it was very, very difficult, and really it didn't work. So now I see a lot of opportunity with those changes.
That's good to hear. Mm-hmm. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Similar to Stanford, I mean, Wharton is a research institution. I think we have more business research faculty than any other business school in the world. But our executive education arms existed for 60 plus years. So we've been doing programs abroad for that amount of time. When it comes to brick and mortar, though, establishing physical presence, our lawyers are not particularly enthusiastic about that prospect. The outcomes are a little bit unknown. It's resource intensive. So from that perspective, I think they look to the Wharton Online team to say, hey, just keep solidifying solid partnerships. A lot of those folks are actually represented in this room, and they've worked out very well for us. To Carissa's point, I mean, they know the market better than we do. They know the learners better than we do. Geofence pricing has also been a strategy that we've put forward, and it's been pretty effective. I think it's also been a great learning opportunity for us as an institution. We're really good on the East Coast of the United States, but yet we have a global brand. And frankly, the institution is not particularly interested in us scaling our internal team to the kind of level or scale that you would need to, say, nurture learners that are on the other side of the world at different hours, right, that speak the language. So for that perspective, we have to partner. It's just an absolute necessity for us if we're going to penetrate global markets. So we continue to do that. I think we've been pretty successful, and a lot of that we owe to our partners.
Sure. Isabelle,
So as far as we are concerned, we want to foster our existing partnerships with IIM, IITs, ISB in Hyderabad, for example, and other institutions. This is very important for us to promote student exchange, faculty exchange, different types of corporations, development of joint programs. So that's our first priority with top-tier institutions, of course, and as a business school, we are triple accredited, so this is important for us to partner with accredited institutions. So this is the first main priority. The second one is to hybridize our programs. That's why we want to formalize MOU with IIT, for example. As a business school, we want to irrigate our programs with other disciplines, other fields, and to cross-fertilize, because we think that there are opportunities here in India to develop programs in cybersecurity, data science, artificial intelligence, and that's why we choose this kind of partnerships. And to answer your questions regarding the new regulation, we think that there are opportunities, and we explore the possibilities offered by this new regulation. There are some constraints. The first one is maybe to be able to deliver exactly the same degree as the degree that we have in France. So this is a constraint for us because the regulation in France is very requiring. For example, you have to have an immersion period in France. So this is a bit difficult for some Indian students to come to France. And, but the opportunity is that we can address a segment of the market, of the environment that we could not address in the other conditions, because and especially students, Indian students that cannot afford foreign degrees. So it's an opportunity for them to study in India in a foreign ecosystem, in a foreign environment. So I think this is an opportunity for India. This is an opportunity for us to target a segment of Indian students that we cannot address in other conditions. So that's a good opportunity, I think.
Sure. No, I agree. There are several aspects of the new regulations that need to be looked into carefully. Specifically, as you said, the curriculum needs to match, and that may not be something feasible for universities across the border. In fact, I believe also the faculty and there's legislation regarding the tuition fees also being reasonable. So there are these challenges that you may also need to sort of make your way through. Dr. Isabelle, I'd like to sort of delve a little bit more into some of your existing partnerships that you already have in India. And I was keen to find out on what are the sort of key considerations that you look for in a partner before sort of starting a collaboration in terms of a program, or even setting up a maybe campus or a joint twinning program or a dual degree program in the future. What would be your considerations for sort of selecting these institutions to partner with? And how would you sort of navigate through the cultural and regulatory sort of scheme with these partners?
I spoke of the quality, of course, of the partners, but I can speak of an experience that we had with Xavier University here in India, and in a city called Bhubaneswar. During the Indo-French Knowledge Summit in 2018, we developed a partnership with this university in the form of a joint venture called Xavier Emlyon Business School. And it was an opportunity for us to develop programs in the field of sports because, as you know in the audience, Bhubaneswar is really focused on sports, sport infrastructure, sports facilities, hockey, and so on. Mm-hmm. And with Xavier University, we decided to develop this kind of programs to fit the needs of the Odisha state. And that was an experience. This is a niche, sure. And that's why it's not really profitable. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting in terms of experience, and it was a way to enter the Indian market, fitting with the needs of the Indian economy and the Odisha state needs. So. We are in a learning curve, of course. We try to make some progress, but this is, as I said before, this is very important to explore the real needs of the Indian market and to fit with the skills that are needed here in India.
Sure. Thank you. That's a terrific answer. Eric, I'd like to sort of go back to your previous response regarding the fact that you've been advised not to set up physical campuses in India and you prefer to go online.
Legally.
Legally, yes. Yeah. Yes, I understand. So I'd just like to sort of get your perspective on how would you sort of weigh one over the other, whether to set up a physical campus. Of course, you already mentioned some of your concerns, and I'm assuming that's more a focus for India. But what about the rest of the world? How do you sort of weigh setting up a physical campus vis-a-vis sort of launching an online program, which of course has a larger audience? What do you see as the advantages or disadvantages of one over the other? And where do you see this trend sort of moving in the future? Do you see more of online engagement or more in-person engagement?
Yeah, that's a good question. Carissa and I were talking a little bit about this before the session, that U2U hasn't been a particularly strong part of our business. And I didn't want to make Isabelle mad because we've had an INSEAD partnership for like 20 years, so don't get angry with me. But when we think about physical campuses, we have a presence in Beijing. We're also in San Francisco, which I appreciate isn't international, but it covers, a different region than we can in Philadelphia. The latter part of your question is interesting. The person that hired me at Wharton, our former vice dean, had sat me down, and one of the lessons he gave me early on was that it's news when Wharton does something. It's much bigger news when Wharton decides to stop doing something. So when we think about physical infrastructure, if we're actually going to go that route, we have to be hyper intentional about we're there to stay, right? This is something that's not going to be for a year. It's going to be for multiple decades. And I just think one of the most enjoyable parts of my 3 days so far in India has been, things have changed significantly with our Chinese market. I don't think Wharton's unique in that respect. But to see all of the vibrant growth and enthusiasm that I've seen here, specifically across this country, is really exciting. So, as much as our attorneys may get frustrated about we might want to go a little bit further in this exploration, the last part of your question is maybe the most important for our business model, and it's that blended programming is becoming a normal demand from learners, right? They want both. They want the convenience of being able to study on their own time, but they want to be able to build their network in person. And that means that for our online programs, a lot of them now have a residency component where they can come to Penn, or we may bring boots in the ground to a particular place with our faculty. And I think that's not something that's going away anytime soon. I think it's going to become the new norm for program delivery.
Great, thank you. Carissa, would you like to add to that, and also to sort of share your perspective from Stanford? What are their thoughts on expanding? Would you rather launch an online program, engage the market? Is that the approach that you'd like to take before setting up a physical university anywhere overseas? or sort of how would you really approach setting up a physical university eventually in a market which has the demand and, of course, aligns with your cultural values as well?
So I think institutions like Stanford are very faculty driven. So if we were to set up a campus anywhere outside of the US, and we have campuses in other geographies, Korea, for example, there's a faculty member who is doing research on that region, and so there's a center there that was set up relatively recently. So it's, for us, it's very much driven by faculty interest and less about the teaching interest. We might then be able to, and we're doing this in Korea, for example, leverage that campus, that research campus, to provide education locally, because we have faculty flying there, and it makes it easier to do that. But I mean, Stanford, like Penn, is very hesitant to set up campuses unless we are there for decades. We're not going to invest those resources. And then when I think it would be important for me to mention a few examples of models that are interesting for how we deliver and how we think about online education. So there's a massive need globally around, fundamental computer science education. And so there was a donor that was very interested in helping Stanford scale its very unique introductory computer science courses, and that made it possible for us to reach millions of learners with that Computer Science 106 offering. That's one example of a model that I think works very well. And we've had conversations, thinking about India in particular, and with our development office around, because we have to make sure that we can provide financially sustainable offerings when we scale, right? We need to make sure we can do that. And as Eric said, it's news when Stanford stops a program or stops a campus. Even when we sunset a program, there's all kinds of communication around it, and it's, we get backlash from learners, we get backlash from geographies, so we have to be very intentional about what we do. So I think the donor model is very, very good, I think, for trying to reach underserved communities with existing education programs that Stanford already does well. We've done this with Andrew Ng and Deep Learning AI, for example, around artificial intelligence education as well. That's not a donor model, that's a very low-cost, scaled model, but it works very well. And we, as Eric mentioned, we have to partner with folks like Emeritus and Coursera and others to get that kind of activity to scale, because we can't build, like Eric, I can't hire, 100 new developers to develop the technology required to do that. I need to do that through partnerships.
Great. So what I'm hearing is edtech companies are here to stay.
For sure.
All right. So Eric, I just want to go back to your experience in Beijing as you'd set up a physical university there, as you mentioned. What would you say have been your learnings from that experience? And specifically, how do you deal with the challenge of maintaining the same quality of the curriculum as well as faculty and the teaching, of course, overall, as Wharton would in the US?
It's all about faculty. That's just where it starts and ends. I don't know if this is particularly unique for Wharton, but we only use standing faculty for our programs. It's one of the reasons, we're not going to outsource. When necessary, we'll bring in senior lecturers that bring in industry expertise, which I also think is pretty common. But when we're doing any sort of satellite programs at a different campus, or we're doing custom programs for a client anywhere around the world, we're flying our best faculty. It's why those companies partner with us. It's why those learners enroll in those programs. So there's no shortcut there, right? We're going to invest that money. We're going to make sure that they have everything they need to run a successful program. Mm-hmm. I think that just the difficult part is that you're beholden to different rules and regulations in a different part of the world. And, we try to do our best to understand that nuance, mm-hmm. and to have the trusted advisors that understand that market in a really intimate way. But the fact is, it's a huge undertaking to consider building a new space or leasing space in another part of the world. I'm incredibly optimistic about this market, so I think it's something that Wharton takes quite seriously. So I'm really, as I come to this conference in future years, I'm excited to come back and see where we are in a few years' time.
Sure, thank you. Okay, just shifting gears here now, I'd like to talk about this concept of custom programs, as you call it, where you develop programs with corporations on a B2B level rather than a B2C typically. Dr. Isabelle, would you like to share your thoughts on how you see these custom programs sort of evolve? Are they going to be a significant portion of your business in the future? Are you sort of focusing more on B2C now, or is that an area of interest for you?
Yes, in Europe, of course, in France, of course, but for India, we aim at developing this kind of programs in partnership with Indian institutions. I spoke of IIT before because we think that the complementarity between technology and management could be useful for corporations. That's why these B2B programs are interesting for us. One of the main foreign employer here in India is Capgemini, and we undertook some initiatives with them and some action. We discussed with them to develop custom programs. And here in India, their headquarters is in Mumbai, and so this is a point of interest for us to develop this kind of B2B program beyond B2C, beyond executive education, executive MBAs, and so on. So that's an opportunity, especially in India, with lots of French corporation, and everywhere here you see some French Schneider, Capgemini, and so on. So this is, I think that an institution like us can really answer the needs of this corporation here in India.
Sure, thank you. Eric, Carissa, would you like to share your perspective, and is Wharton and
yeah, so I love this question because pre-pandemic, we've been doing custom education for a very long time, and we had, for many years, because we are an online education provider, tried to convince companies in the B2B space that they could have faster impact within their organizations if they took a multi-layered approach. So often, companies will come to Stanford and they want to send their C-suite executives to Stanford, or very senior high potentials, and we tried to convince them that if you want to actually activate your strategy faster, then you want to think about a multi-level strategy within the organization with regard to education, so that you can activate your strategies quicker by speaking the same language, by getting your line level managers aligned with your goals and objectives. And so after the pandemic, everyone was doing things online. They realized that actually they could scale education inside organizations. So we're actually launching a new initiative that we're calling Enterprise Education for Transformation. The idea that institutions like Stanford can help you activate your strategy very quickly through multi-level education. Some of it would be online, some of it will be on the Stanford campus for your high potentials or your C-suite. So thinking about a blended delivery approach, I think, is really a good strategy. And why we say transformation, I think a lot of organizations are battling disruption, technological changes, and just trying to get a handle on how you manage that within your organization at multiple levels and across different industries is just essential for the future of many businesses.
Sure.
The biggest trend I've been keeping an eye on recently is the larger corporations that we work with have done a great job, in my opinion, of building out internal academies, right, where they're actually building their own curricula. And then they look to us to fill gaps. I think on the front end, you could be a little frustrated about that, right? Because they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Right, but they can't do everything. And that's where we take the approach of, we want to be your trusted advisor, right? And in a lot of ways, I almost see it as a reversal of roles for where we look to partners to bring our open enrollment programs to a global scale. In some cases, they can look to us for partnership to bring, right, areas of expertise that they don't otherwise have in-house. And then the hope is that's a sustained relationship over time. So I think the internal academy approach for corporate has been a real change for us that we've tried to kind of go with the flow.
Sure, great. Thank you for those answers. I'm conscious that we're almost towards the end of our allotted time. I'd just like to ask the panel one last question, and this is forward-looking. Considering that the weight of the global economy is increasingly moving towards South and Southeast Asian markets, what are your plans specifically in context of these markets for your respective institutions? And maybe, of course, also India in that picture, if that's already there. And also, where would you see is your largest, where would you see your largest market for education in the next, let's say, 20 years? Dr. Isabelle, would you like to start with that?
We spoke of campuses in different countries. We have a campus in Shanghai. So we think that China, of course, in the past was a very, very dynamic market, and we think the same for India. We think that this is an opportunity for us. As I said, the needs in terms of education are huge. So we have lots of possibilities, lots of opportunities to collaborate with Indian institutions. For the moment, France attracts 10,000 students in 2023. And our French president, Emmanuel Macron, said that we were supposed to attract 30,000 students in the forthcoming years by 2025.
Sure.
So this is a challenge, and so we have to be more dynamic, more attractive to attract Indian students. That's the first challenge for us, and we have to be more dynamic to collaborate and to partner with Indian institutions here in India, given the number of students in, as I said, 41 million students in India, and this number is supposed to double by in the forthcoming years. So these are very huge opportunities for us. But in the philosophy that I described, to work in India and for India, and not to be not just to export our system, not just to be mechanical and to say that we know everything, that we have to adapt to this market and to the culture of India, to its routine, to its social context, to its economic context, to its priorities in terms of topics, cybersecurity, luxury, and so on, entrepreneurship. That's my vision.
Sure, yeah. I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
I like that answer. I'll take that.
Sure, please.
I think one of the things that we need to do as an institution is continue to be more intentional about our learning, specifically in this part of the world. Mm-hmm. It's a process, and that's why the partnerships that we do have, we need to make stronger. We need to sustain them over time, because the presence here can't be disrupted at all. We need to be steady state with a marketing presence, a recruitment presence in India. As far as like different markets that you're talking about, I think sub-Saharan Africa is one I'm paying particular attention to. I think the online market for education there has been strong K-12. As these folks get older. One of the things I've heard a lot at this conference is employability of young people in this country.
Yes.
And if we can even play just a small role in helping people achieve those sort of employment dreams, I think that just builds a natural cycle where more and more people will look to us as their solution provider. So
sure. That's
it's
an
about
interesting
learning.
perspective. Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Carissa, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for where I sit at Stanford, I'm in the School of Engineering, although I have university-wide responsibilities as well. India is such a wonderful market for us because there's a value placed on education that's like none other in the world, and I love that about India. There's also a lot of interest in the engineering side, education for engineering, because that helps level up and bring individuals that otherwise wouldn't have a going concern in terms of their living wage. It levels them up, and so India for me is a big focus for Stanford. As I mentioned, 15% of our learners already are from India, and I think strengthening that through partnerships like Eric mentioned is essential. I think also I would be remiss in not mentioning language. I think language is a huge challenge for our institutions. There's a lot of interest from places like Thailand, folks trying, different countries trying to kind of take ownership over APAC and trade across the region with the geopolitical shifts with China, but language is a challenge. And maybe AI will solve that for us over time, but I think here in India, we just have immense opportunity. You have this massive population that is interested in education, passionate about education, and so that's an important strategy for us regionally.
Great, thank you so much. Really, really interesting answers from all of you. Unfortunately, I think we've run out of time, but on behalf of the audience, I would like to thank all of you for this session. Thank you so much. Thank you.